and Senator Graham joins me now. Lindsey, it's great to have you back and appreciate your being here today.
Thank you. For a Baptist preacher, you're very witty.
Now, you know, you might have just made all the Baptists mad thinking that they're not funny as they think they are. So,
well, I am one. I know we're not funny.
I want to ask you, you had been supportive of the action going into Syria, but then it just got really, really out of hand. Now today there's an agreement,
right.
At least seemingly there is. Do you trust the agreement and the parties that are putting it together?
Absolutely not. It's a blind alley. It's a box canyon for America. Putin's led us down a road here where there's just no good outcome. Without the threat of force, this agreement means nothing. The reason I wanted to strike Assad is to punish him, deteriorate his ability to deliver chemical weapons, and change the tide of battle. But, Mike, what happens if Assad says, no, you can't go there? Without a Chapter 7 resolution, which the Russians are threatening to veto, which would allow the use of force to enforce the agreement, it means nothing. So this is a debacle.
Where did this whole thing unravel?
Oh, I think when the president came to Congress, right after the red line was drawn a year ago, the question is, why would Assad do it after he was told by Obama not to? I think from Benghazi forward, we've been sending a real signal that we're weak and we're a paper tiger. When they killed our ambassador and 3 other brave Americans in Benghazi, and a year later nothing happened to anyone, I think every radical jihadist is on steroids, and Assad sized up Obama and thought, well, I'll do what I need to protect myself, and I'll challenge this guy. And at the end of the day, the Russians and the Iranians and the Syrians have won this contest, and we have lost, and I really worry about what's going to happen in Iran now. The Ayatollahs in Iran would be dancing, and the only reason they're not dancing is because they just don't believe in dancing.
You feel that if we don't get this situation in Syria resolved, that within 6 months we're going to be dealing with something far more serious between Iran and Israel. Explain what you mean, and what kind of serious situation do you think we'll face in 6 months?
Well, Iran is the biggest ally of Assad. They're linked to the hip. Russia's been helping. So anything we do in Syria is sending a signal to the Iranians. I believe the Iranians are trying to develop a nuclear weapon, not build a nuclear power plant. Do you agree with that, Mike?
Absolutely. I don't think there's any illusion on any sane person's part to think that they're not trying to weaponize nuclear material.
Well, look how we've handled the chemical weapons threat in Syria. If we duplicate that with the Iranians, they're going to march toward a nuclear weapon and dare Israel to attack them. So in the next 6 months, our friends in Israel are going to have to take the Iranian zone unless the United States can send a clear signal to Iran, unlike we've sent to Syria. The mixed message and the debacle called Syria can't be repeated when it comes to Iran. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to get a bipartisan coalition together. We're going to put together a use of force resolution, allowing our country to use military force as a last resort to stop the Iranian nuclear program, to make sure they get a clear signal that all this debacle called Syria doesn't mean we're confused about Iran. We may be confused as a nation about what to do with the chemical weapons in Syria, but we're not confused as a nation as to what to do with the nuclear program in Iran. I think Republicans, Democrats, Libertarians, and Vegetarians all believe the Iranians cannot be allowed to get a nuclear weapon, and we have to send that signal, and I'm going to draft a resolution allowing force to be used to stop their nuclear program. I'm going to need your help, Mike. I'm going to need your audience's help. Every friend of Israel needs to rally behind this endeavor, and Israel feels abandoned after Syria. And I want to send a signal to Tehran and Jerusalem and Tel Aviv that we're not going to leave our friends in Israel behind, and to the Ayatollahs. If you march toward a nuclear weapon, all options are on the table, including the military option.
So, Lindsey, I want to clarify, you actually are going to seek sort of a preemptive approval to give the president a loaded weapon so that he feels the absolute freedom and support of a bipartisan Congress to take whatever action, including military, against Iran to prevent them from having nuclear weapons.
That's exactly right, Mike. If the Iranians develop a nuclear weapon, every Sunni Arab state will want to challenge the Shia Persians' nuclear capability. It will start a nuclear arms race. I'm afraid that the Iranian Ayatollahs would share the technology with terrorists, and it would work its way back here to America. You're on the road to Armageddon if the Ayatollahs in Iran get a nuclear weapon. So what I'm going to do is offer a resolution allowing the use of force as a last resort. Let the president know when he said all options are on the table, including the military option to stop the Iranian nuclear program, that the Congress agrees with him. I'm not asking him to come to us. We're going to put it on the table because, Mike, if we don't do this soon, this mess in Syria is going to lead to a conflict between Israel and Iran because the Iranians have to believe America is not serious about their nuclear program after the way we've allowed Putin to lead us into a blind canyon in Syria.
Very strong stuff.
Why
We get to hear from the survivors of Benghazi. Will we ever?
Yes, we will. I think Charles Woods is one of your next guests. I want to tell Mr. Woods and every other family member who lost every member of a family that was lost a loved one in Benghazi. We're going to get to hear from the survivors. It's been a year since the attack. Congress is an independent oversight body. Can you imagine if this was Bush, by the way, how our Democratic friends would be acting? So I'm going to stop every State Department nomination and appointment until the State Department agrees to make available to the United States Congress, House and Senate, those who survived this debacle called Benghazi. We need to hear from them what happened and not be told by some spokesman as to what happened.
How come that we would even be pushed over and over and over the side again and again and not be given the answers? I mean, sooner or later, they should know it's going to come out. Why would the stall continue like this?
Well, I think I think the narrative that bin Laden was dead and al-Qaeda was on the run was destroyed by the attack in Benghazi. Before the attack, they had made numerous requests for additional security. Chris Stevens says we can't defend the consulate from a coordinated attack. Al-Qaeda flags are flying all over the place. Why for 8.5 hours nobody could come to their rescue? And how in the world after the attack did this story start that this was a protest gone bad spawned by a hateful video? I've looked at the evidence, Mike. There is not one piece of evidence, not one communication from Tripoli or Benghazi suggesting there was a protest outside the consulate. The ambassador went to bed at 9:02. He would not have gone to bed if there was a protest outside the consulate wall where he was staying. So this was a complete fabrication by the administration. Mr. Woods and his family have not been told the truth. The survivors are going to speak, or all hell's going to break out between the Congress, the State Department, and the CIA. We're not going to be pushed around. We're not going to let the State Department become Putin and we become Obama. We're going to push back. We're going to win this fight because the American people need to know what happened to these 4 brave Americans and get to the bottom of it so it doesn't happen again.
Well, Senator, I appreciate your tenacity on this because the American people, and especially the families of those 4 who were murdered, deserve an answer. And thanks for standing up for them and pushing back hard. Great to have you here, and thanks again for joining us.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you very much. God bless.
Senator